Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Yin and Yang, the two breathings of the cosmos. Before heaven stretched above the earth, and before mountains, rivers, forests, or stars had taken their places, the universe existed as an undivided whole. Ancient Chinese tradition remembered this beginning as a vast, formless state, known as the Hundun, the great, undifferentiated chaos in which all possibilities rested together. Nothing yet stood apart. Light and darkness had not separated. Sky and earth had not divided. Motion and stillness remained intertwined within a single cosmic unity. Then, over immeasurable ages, the universe began to awaken. From within the primordial whole emerged two great currents of existence. The lighter, clearer rising force became Yang, while the heavier, quieter, descending force became Yin. Yang lifted upward to form the heavens, carrying with it brightness, warmth, activity, and expansion. Yin settled gently below, becoming the earth, embracing coolness, rest, receptivity, and nourishment. Yet the two were never understood as opposing armies struggling for victory. Instead, they were remembered as complementary movements of the same living cosmos, each incomplete without the other. Day gradually became night, only for night to yield once more to dawn. Summer ripened into autumn before giving way to winter and the returning spring. Rivers carved valleys through patient persistence, while mountains stood firm through quiet endurance. Even breath itself reflected the rhythm of yin and yang, inhalation receiving what exhalation released. Ancient sages observed these patterns everywhere they looked. The moon borrowed its brilliance from the sun, while the sun disappeared each evening so the moon could illuminate the darkness. Seeds rested unseen beneath the earth before rising toward the light. Still waters reflected the heavens, while storms renewed the forests they seemed to destroy. Thus, the world revealed itself not through endless conflict, but through continual relationship. To help express this mystery, later generations gave visual form to the cosmic rhythm of the familiar Taijitu, the circular symbol often called the yin-yang. Within the dark half rests the seed of light, while within the light half rests a seed of darkness, reminding those who contemplate it that no condition remains forever complete within itself. Noon quietly moves toward evening. Winter already contains a promise of spring. Strength requires gentleness, and gentleness possesses its own quiet strength. The sages taught that harmony comes not from choosing one side forever, but from recognizing the movement through which each gives rise to the other. The oldest Chinese understanding of the universe did not imagine creation as a victory of light over darkness or order over chaos. It remembered instead a cosmos sustained by balance, where every living thing exists because complementary forces continue their timeless dance, each allowing the other to become fully itself. Story 2. Ahura, Mazda, and Angra, Mainyu. Before the world of mountains, rivers, plants, animals, and humanity that fully unfolded, the ancient Persian tradition spoke of two primordial spiritual realities whose opposition would shape the destiny of creation. One was Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, source of light, truth, wisdom, and all that gives life. From him flowed justice, generosity, harmony, and that sacred order known is Asha, the principle through which the universe exists in truth and right relationship. Opposed to this stood Angra Mainyu, later called Ahriman, the destructive spirit, whose nature delighted in falsehood, hatred, violence, disease, decay, and confusion. Where Ahura Mazda created, Angra Mainyu sought to corrupt. Where truth appeared, he answered with deception. Where life flourished, he introduced death. The two were remembered not as equal gods sharing dominion over the universe, but as opposing spiritual realities whose encounter gave history its moral purpose. Ahura Mazda first brought forth a perfect spiritual creation before clothing it in the material world, fashioning the heavens, the waters, the earth, plants, animals, and finally humankind. Yet the visible world was never intended as a prison. It became the sacred field upon which truth and falsehood would meet. Angra Mainyu entered creation to spoil what had been made good, sending drought against fertile lands, sickness against healthy bodies, and discord among communities that sought peace. Even so, Ahura Mazda had already foreseen this challenge. Rather than destroying his adversary immediately, he allowed creation to unfold through a great cosmic span of time, knowing that goodness freely chosen would possess a strength greater than goodness imposed. Humanity therefore occupied a unique place within the universe. Every honest word spoken strengthened Asha. Every lie nourished the Druge, the spirit of deceit. Every act of compassion, justice, courage, or generosity became part of the cosmic struggle itself. Kings, shepherds, artisans, farmers, and children alike participated in the great work through the choices they made each day. The teachings of the prophet Zarathustra called people to live by the simple yet profound path of good thoughts, good words, good deeds, believing that each faithful action contributed to the eventual renewal of all creation. At the end of time, the ancient tradition foretold the coming of the Frashroke Eti, the final restoration, when evil would be defeated, creation purified, and death itself overcome. Then the world would be renewed, and all things would exist once more in harmony beneath the wisdom of Ahura Mazda. Thus, the oldest Zoroastrian teachings remembered the universe not as a place abandoned to endless conflict, but as a creation moving steadily toward restoration, where every soul participates in the triumph of truth through the choices made in ordinary life. Story 3. Ma'at and Isfet, the balance of the world. Before the temples rose along the Nile, and before the first pharaoh wore the double crown, the ancient Egyptians believed the universe itself had emerged from the limitless waters of noon. As the Creator brought forth the first light and the ordered world took shape, another reality also became known. Creation would endure only so long as harmony continued to overcome the forces that sought to unravel it. The Egyptians gave these two realities enduring names. One was Ma'at, the sacred principle of truth, justice, balance, right relationship, and cosmic order. The other was Isfet, the presence of falsehood, violence, injustice, chaos, and everything that threatened to return creation to formlessness. Ma was often portrayed as a graceful goddess crowned with a single ostrich feather, but she was far more than a divine person. She was the order by which the stars crossed the heavens without collision, the regular flooding of the Nile that nourished the fields, the honesty of a judge, the fairness of a ruler, the keeping of a promise, and the harmony through which gods and humanity flourished together. Every sunrise proclaimed that Ma'at still prevailed, for each morning the sun god Ra completed his perilous journey through the Duat and emerged once more into the eastern sky. Yet the Egyptians never imagined the order existed without challenge. Wherever Ma'at was present, Isfet lingered nearby. Isfet appeared wherever lies replaced truth, where greed overcame generosity, where violence shattered peace, where rulers abandoned justice, or where selfish fractures the bonds holding communities together. Each night, as Ra sailed through the underworld, the great serpent, Apep, rose from the darkness in an attempt to halt the solar bark and return the cosmos to endless night. The gods, joined by Set in one of the most important sacred duties, battled the serpent until the dawn approached once more. Every successful sunrise became a visible sign that Ma'at had again overcome the forces of Isfet, allowing creation to continue for another day. The struggle also lived within human life. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at by ruling with justice and protecting the vulnerable. Scribes recorded laws with honesty. Farmers measured fairly. Merchants conducted business with integrity. Priests offered the rituals that sustained harmony between heaven and earth. Every truthful word and every just action strengthened Ma'at within the world. At death, each person's heart was brought before Osiris and weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart remained lighter than or equal to the feather, having lived in truth and balance, the soul entered the blessed field of reeds. If it had grown heavy with wrongdoing, it was consumed by Ammit, ending its journey. Thus, the Egyptians remembered that Ma'at and Isfet were never merely ideas discussed by philosophers. They were living realities woven through every sunrise, every judgment, every harvest, every kingdom, and every human heart. Creation endured because balance was continually chosen, protected, and renewed. Story 4: Walking in Balance. Long before cities of stones rose against the world, the peoples of North America looked upon the forests, mountains, rivers, deserts, plains, and skies, and understood that no living thing existed alone. Across many indigenous traditions, creation was not sustained because one force conquered another, but because every part of the world remained in relationship with everything else. The sun warmed the earth, yet the rain cooled it. Fire renewed forests, while rivers carried new life through the valleys. The buffalo fed the people, and the people honored the buffalo in return. Wolves strengthened the herds they hunted, while the herds nourished the wolves that followed them. Day yielded to night, winter rested the land before spring awakened it again. Life and death were not enemies but compasses, within a circle far older than humanity itself. Among the Lakota, the phrase, Mitakuye Oyasi, often translated as all my relations, expressed the understanding that people, animals, plants, waters, stones, mines, and stars belong to one extended family. Many Anishin Abe teachings spoke of walking gently into the earth while remembering that every action affected the generations yet to come. The Haudenosaunee honored the principle remembered today as the seventh generation, encouraging leaders to weigh every important decision according to how it would shape the lives of descendants far beyond their own lifetime. Across the Southwest, Pueblo people observed the cycles of rain, planting, harvest, and ceremony as sacred relationships rather than resources to be controlled. Though each nation carried its own languages, ceremonies, and stories, a common understanding appeared again and again. Balance required reciprocity. One did not simply take from the world, one offered gratitude in return. Hunters gave thanks before taking an animal's life. Water was approached with reverence because it sustained every living being. Fire warmed and protected, yet demanded respect. Mountains became places of prayer. Rivers became living relatives. Even silence carried its own wisdom. Elders taught that when human beings forgot these relationships, imbalance entered the world. Greed exhausted the land. Pride separated people from one another. Carelessness wounded waters and forests that had faithfully nourished countless generations. Yet balance could always begin again through humility, gratitude, generosity, and remembrance. Harmony was not something achieved once and then forgotten. It was renewed every day through the choices made toward the living world. Thus, the oldest teachings did not divide existence into opposing camps, where one side must finally destroy the other. They remembered creation as a great circle in which every being possessed both gifts and responsibilities, each life woven into the flourishing of all the others. To walk wisely was to recognize one's place within the living circle, and to move through it with respect, knowing that the health of the whole depended upon the care each part showed to every other. Daily Thread for July 19th, The Dualities. As our journey through the great stories of creation continues, today's myths invite us to see the world not as a place divided into simple opposites, but as a living tapestry woven from relationships that depend upon one another. Ancient Chinese sages watched the rhythms of heaven and earth and described them as yin and yang, two complementary currents through which every season, tide, and heartbeat found its place. In the sacred teachings of ancient Persia, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu revealed the universe where truth and falsehood continually confronted one another, inviting every person to strengthen the light through good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Along the Nile, the Egyptians understood that Ma and Isfet shaped every sunrise, every judgment, and every kingdom, reminding humanity that order survives only when justice, honesty, and balance are actively upheld. Across the diverse indigenous nations of North America, the oldest teaching spoke not of one force overcoming another, but of a living world sustained through reciprocity, gratitude, and relationship, where rivers, animals, forests, mountains, and people all belong to one another within an enduring circle of life. Though these traditions arose in lands separated by deserts, oceans, and centuries, each recognized a profound truth. Existence is rarely sustained by extremes alone. Day gives way to night, so that dawn may return. Rain follows drought, while rivers carve stone through patient persistence rather than sudden force. Justice requires mercy, strength is guided by wisdom, and freedom flourishes alongside responsibility. The oldest storytellers understood that balance is not a destination reached once and forever. It is a rhythm that must be renewed, protected, and chosen again with every generation. As tonight's fire settles into glowing embers, consider this. Where is my own life? Where in my own life do I instinctively divide what was never meant to be separated? Where my strength and gentleness, certainty and curiosity, discipline and rest, justice and compassion belong beside one another instead of standing opposed? The ancient stories remind us that creation endures not because one voice finally silences another, but because the deepest wisdom is often found in the space where seemingly opposite truths learn to live together.